हेलो स्टूडेंट्स, टुडे विल बी डिस्कस अबाउट ह्यूमनिज्म। ओके, आज का हमारा टॉपिक क्या है? ह्यूमनिज्म। व्हाट डू यू अंडरस्टैंड बाय द टर्म ह्यूमनिज्म? ह्यूमनिज्म डिफाइंड द टर्म्स Renaissance and humanism, which are often applied to the same movement, have properly a narrower significance. The same movement have properly a narrower significance. The term Renaissance, though used by many writers to denote to the whole translation from the Middle East to the modern world, is more correctly transition from the Middle East to the modern world is more correctly applied to the revival of art resulting from the discovery and imitation of classical models in the 14th and 15th centuries. Humanism applies to the revival of classical literature, and also humanism applies to the revival of classical literature and was so called by its leaders following the example of Petrarch because they held that study of the classic literature humanize more human writing rather than the old theology was the best means of promoting the largest human interest in the 16th century. Word humanist was coined to signify one who taught or worked in the studia humanities or humanities, that is grammar, rhetoric, history, poetry, and moral and imaginative aspects and activities of man, such as mathematics, natural philosophy, and intense study of first Roman and the Greek literature and culture. In particular works of Cicero, Aristotle, and Plato, they recovered, edited, and expounded many ancient texts in Latin and Greek, and so contributed greatly to the store of materials and ideas of the European Renaissance. Out of this intellectual ferment, there emerged a view of man and philosophy quite different from medieval scholasticism. In the 19th century, this of Renaissance thought was labeled humanism. Reason, balance, and a proper dignity for man were the central ideals of humanist thought. Many humanists also stress the need for a rounded development of man's diverse powers, physical, mental, artistic, and moral, as opposed to merely technical or specialized training. Matthew Arnold, the great proponent of humanism in the Victorian period, strongly defended the 20th century of the American movement of 1910-1933, known as the New Humanism, argued strongly for a return to a primarily humanistic education and a view of moral and literary values based largely on classical literature. Next, Christian humanism. Within the mainstream of humanism were some who, like Erasmus, retained their allegiance to the traditional religious institutions, and others who, like Montague, became skeptic and even atheist. Most of the humanists remained pious Christians who incorporated the concept and ideals inherited from pagan antiquity into the frame of the Christian creed. The result was that they emphasized the values achievable in this world, placed monastic withdrawal, whatever their divergences, they were bound together by their reverence for the classical ideas. It has recently become standard to refer to this structure of classical and Christian views, typical of writers such as Sir Philip Sidney, Spencer, and Milton, as Christian humanism. Next, intellectual movement. Humanism began to develop in Italy in the 14th century and spread all over Europe in the 15th and 16th century. It was an intellectual movement which characterized the Renaissance, and the attitude of mind was the characteristics of this movement. Humanism represented a break with a good many of the standard ideas of the Middle Ages. It emphasized the dignity of man and his perfectibility. It considered that this world a legitimate object of interest and love, and it tended to place individual with all his capabilities. Fully development. The language, literature, and thought of ancient Greece and Roman occupied a central position in the thinking of the humanists because the products of these civilizations exemplified the ideals of the humanism better than did medieval literature. Text and theology. The humanists not only rediscovered classical text and revived ancient literary types such as pastoral themes and critical theories. They applied their scholarship to the establishment of accurate biblical texts, and especially in Northern Europe, sought to reform the church in education. They stood for physical as well as mental training and for teaching by reason and gentleness rather than by authority and brutality. Next, the consequences in literature. The reverence for the classical writers had a variety of consequences in literature. It produced the imitation of classical styles and genres and the right codification of rules supposed to have been followed by the ancients, who were held up as models of perfection. Literature was polished and enriched by what it learned from the Greek and Latin authors, but sometimes hindered in its own development by the attempt to conform to its revered models. In the new classical of the 18th century, this admiration of classical literature reached its height too much so that Pope laid down as a final test of excellence. Learns hence for ancient rules are just a step to copy nature to copy them. The emulation of the ancient writer is no longer a dominant force in literature, but humanistic ideals are still influential in modern thought. The kind of Christian humanism typified by Erasmus is reflected in the writing of men like Sidney Bacon, Spencer, Milton, possibly Shakespeare. Their attitude toward is anthropocentric. Instead of regarding man as a fallen, corrupt, and sinful creature, their idea of truth and excellence is based on human values and human experience. They strive for moderate, achievable, even worldly aims rather than revering asceticism. Hamlet's famous speech beginning, "What a piece of work is man, how novel in reason, how infinite a faculty," is often quoted to exemplify the humanist view, though of course Hamlet undercuts his praise by referring to man finally as this quintessence of dust. Okay. Thank you for watching.